Hey Bethel kids, I'm Caleb.
And I'm Drea, and guess what? Today is so exciting because we're gonna meet the last person from the Faithful Hall of Fame.
Yep, and her name is Rahab. She did something so brave that it saved all of God's people.
Yeah. But before we do that, let's sing some songs.
All right, let's go. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4.
A Hall of Fame is a place that honors people that are exceptional at what they do. It exists to remind future generations of the greatness of these people from the past. Did you know that God has a hall of fame to remember the extraordinary people of faith who were written about in the Old Testament? And we can find that hall of fame in the New Testament of the Bible. Hebrews 11 tells us that faith is the confidence that what we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things we cannot see. This faith is what gave people in the old days great fame. This faith is what puts them in God's hall of fame. By faith, Abel gave his best to God. By faith, Enoch walked with God and was a friend of God. By faith, Noah listened to God, obeyed God, trusted God, and did what's right. It was by faith that Abraham followed God, and that even Sarah, Abraham's wife, believed that God would keep his promise. It was by faith that Isaac promised blessings for the future to his sons, Jacob and Esau. And by faith, Jacob blessed his sons and worshiped God. By faith, Joseph believed that God would guide him and see him through every troubled time. By faith, Moses looked forward to the great reward that God had in store for him and led the people of Israel out of captivity. It was by faith that Rahab was not destroyed with the people in her city who refused to obey God. And it was by faith that Joshua led the people of Israel. All of these people became famous for their faith, yet none of them received all that God had promised. For God has planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. So since God has given us His hall of fame of people who have gone before us and had great faith despite hard times, let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who makes our faith perfect, so that one day God may say, "Well done, good and faithful servant," and we may be initiated into His great hall of fame. This is Rahab.
Hi.
Rahab lived in the town of Jericho in the Promised Land. Rahab was not an Israelite, and she made bad choices. But God had a plan for Rahab, even though she was a sinner.
All right.
Now God told His people, the Israelites,
Hey, that's us.
to go into the Promised Land. So Joshua sent 2 spies to search the land around the city of Jericho. The 2 spies came to Rahab's house to stay the night. But the king of Jericho heard that there were spies in his city, so he sent orders for Rahab to bring them out. But Rahab hid the spies
Bring him out, you hear?
and told the king's men that it was true that the men were at her house, but she did not know where they were now.
I don't know. But
She told the king's men to go quickly to find the spies, because they could not have gone far.
oh no.
Oh, right.
So the king's men rushed out to the city in pursuit of the Israelite spies. All the while, the Israelites hid on Rahab's roof. So Rahab went to them and said, "I know the Lord has given you this land. We have heard of the great acts that God has done for you. Your God is the God of all the heavens and the earth. So please swear to me that you will be kind to my family." The spies agreed to this, and Rahab helped them escape from the city. Before they left, they told Rahab to tie a scarlet rope to the window.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oops.
This rope would serve as a mark for Rahab's house and would remind the Israelites of their promise to her.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And so the spies were on their way. For 3 days, they hid from the king's men who were looking for them. Finally, they returned to Joshua and told them all they had seen. Rahab was remembered for her faithfulness, for she had given a friendly welcome to the spies and put her trust in the one true God.
Hey there, Bethel kids. It's Brother Marwan here. I'm glad you're able to join us this morning. And today I want to talk to you about someone named Rahab. See, Rahab was from this place called Jericho. And Jericho is the promised land that God had promised to the Israelites. And so Rahab and her story is pretty interesting. She is from Jericho, like I said, but she wasn't really well known for doing so many good things. You see, she was a sinner. I mean, like most of us, like all of us, she was a sinner like us, and she had done a lot of terrible things. But you see, God still has a plan for us, even though we're sinners. God still had a plan for Rahab. And you see, God's purpose and plan was going to be revealed through this story. And so what happened was that since Jericho was the land that was promised to the Israelites, Joshua, who led the Israelites at the time, sent 2 spies to go search out this land. And he went and he told them to go search out the land of Jericho and to go search out the land surrounding Jericho. And so these 2 spies went. And so they went to go scout the land just to see what it was like. And as they're scouting the land, they noticed that it's getting dark out. And it's kind of getting too dark for them to comfortably go back to where they came from. And so they decided to spend the night there in Jericho. And they spent the night at Rahab's house. And so as they spent the night there, the king of Jericho eventually found out of the existence of these spies. And he sent for some of his men to go find these spies. And he sent them to Rahab's house. And so as they went to Rahab's house, they knocked on her door there. And they asked Rahab where these spies had gone. And so Rahab told the king's men, she said, well, the spies were here. They were here, but I don't know where they went. I don't know where they are now. But I'll tell you this, since they left not too long ago, you could probably still catch them if you go after them right now. So you gotta hurry up. You gotta go find these men. And so the king's men, they went out looking for these 2 spies. But the whole time, while Rahab was talking to the king's men, these 2 spies were hanging out and they were just hiding up in the roof. And so Rahab goes up to meet these men. And she says, well, since I've done this great deed for you, and since I helped lead these men away from you, can you do something for me? And we see this conversation take place here in Joshua 2. So if you have a Bible, or if you have the Bible app, just turn to Joshua 2. We'll go to verses 9 to 14. And the Bible says here, and she said unto the men, I know that the Lord hath given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you, and when ye came out of Egypt, and what ye did unto the 2 kings of the Amorites, that were on the other side of Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom ye utterly destroyed. And as soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt, neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and in earth beneath. Now therefore I pray you, swear unto me by the Lord, since I have showed you kindness, that ye will also show kindness unto my father's house, and give me a true token, that ye will save alive my father, my mother, my brethren, and my sisters on all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. And the man answered unto her, our life for yours. You see, what happened was that since Rahab hid these men, and that she took care of them and made sure that the king didn't capture them, she made them promise her that when the people of Israel were going to take over the land of Jericho, that her family and all her loved ones weren't going to get hurt, that they were going to be taken care of. And they made that promise to her, and they kept that promise. And so as Rahab was trying to get the 2 spies out of this, she helped them sneak out of Jericho. And the 2 spies, as they were leaving, they told Rahab, you need to get a scarlet rope or a thread and just tie it around this window of your house. And we're going to recognize that thread when we see it. It's going to be a reminder to us that we're going to keep that promise, and that we're going to keep you and your loved ones and your family safe. And so you see, Rahab, she had this great faith in God, and she had this great faith in what the spies were doing, and she recognized that he was the same God that led them out of Egypt, that he was the same God that made them cross the Red Sea and did all these miracles for them. And so when the 2 spies went back to the land of where Joshua was at and the rest of the Israelites were, they told him of the great news and they had Rahab to help them. And so because of Rahab's faith, she was rewarded for it, and she was able to keep her and her family safe because she recognized that God was able to keep his promises just as he kept his promises with the people of Israel, and led them free of the people of Egypt. And so I just want to challenge you with this, to recognize that God is a God who keeps his promises. Even during these troubled times of the coronavirus and everything happening right now, I know everyone's worried and they're freaking out. There's a shortage of toilet paper still. God still keeps his promises, and God's going to take care of you. So just keep that thought in your mind. I also want to challenge you to memorize a verse that Miss Miranda has for you. I just want to let you know that we love you, we're praying for you, and we hope to see you soon. Take care.
Hey Bethel kids, I am so glad and happy that you have tuned in with us this morning, learning about Rahab and how she demonstrated faith by hiding the 2 spies. That's pretty cool, right? But I don't want you to forget your memory verse for this week. So write it down, open up your Bibles to Galatians 3:11. The verse is, "The just shall live by faith." Say it one time with me. The just shall live by faith. Galatians 3:11. So go ahead, memorize that verse for this week, and then send it over to us so that you can be featured on next week's video.
Guys, today we had so much fun with you.
We got to learn about how Rahab saved all of God's people, and she risked her life for it.
Yeah, and that's why our verse this week says that the just shall live by faith. That reminds us that we should live our lives by faith too.
Just like how we learn every single week, faith equals action.
And just like how all of the characters in the Faithful Hall of Fame, through their actions, they showed faith, and you can too. But be ready for next week's episode, because we're going to be talking about the parables.
And also, don't forget to record a video of you saying the memory verse to be featured on our next episode.
Yep.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.